Hi everyone, welcome to my unrehearsed tutorial on how to navigate through 3D space with a camera and lights. I'm going to show you a quick example of what we're going to create. This isn't exactly what ours is going to look like, but I'm going to give you the framework in order to be able to create something like this. You're going to use a comp that's called Begin. This is in your tutorial folder, which I'm going to send you an email and tell you where it is. What I've done here is I have duplicated the same file 3 times. So what we have here is a tunnel that has a left wall, a right wall, a floor, and a ceiling. So what we're going to do now is position the left and right walls so we can move through them in 3D space. And then I'm going to add the floor. Then we're going to duplicate the floor and move its position up. So mainly when we're creating this tunnel, we're going to be using the 3D rotation and position. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn on the 3D layer in the timeline. So you just click on the little cube, which I'm sure by now you're probably very familiar with. So I'm going to start out with the left and go from left to right. So with regard to the left wall, the first thing I'm going to do is change the rotation. And by now you know that if you press the letter R, you can access or expand the rotation properties in After Effects. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the Y rotation to 90 degrees. Oops. Now it doesn't matter if you move I think I'll do this plus. So the other way you can do it is, of course, you can just type in 90 for Y rotation. And there it is. So now what I can do is I can move the position over, which is what I'm doing now by hitting the left arrow keys. The other thing you could do is if I hit P for position, you can see where you can get an idea of where this is going. So right now, this is my XY coordinate. So I'm probably going to go back and adjust this. But right now, it's at 500. So that's the position from the center of this wall. Now I'm going to go to the right wall and press R for rotation. And where the left wall is 90 degrees, the Y rotation, for the X rotation, for the Y rotation, I'm going to make that minus 90 degrees. Okay, so it's in the opposite direction. And now what I'm going to do is use the arrow tool. Once again, I could use the position tool if I wanted to on this, so you can kind of see where it's going. And I'm going to continue to move it. Now, the thing about this is it's a very inexact science. So at this point, we're just sort of taking a guess and trying to make it look as good as possible. If you want to see where the middle of everything is, you can just click on the title action safe, so you can kind of get an idea. The other thing you could do is press Command Control R if you want to access a ruler, so you can see what it looks like if you have a ruler, or you can go into View, Show Ruler. So this looks like, we can always go back and continue to adjust this. So this, right now what I'm doing is just sort of eyeballing this particular composition just to get an idea of what it looks like. And it looks like this has to move over a little more, and this probably has to move over a little more. Okay, so I'm just hitting the left and right arrow keys, but of course you could also manipulate the position. Okay, so now we have the left wall and the right wall. Now what we're going to do is close these up and go to the floor. For the floor, we're going to move the X rotation. So I'm going to press R for rotation. And for X rotation on the floor, I'm going to select 90. Now I can either do this if I want, or, actually it doesn't make any difference if you go minus or plus because it's exactly the same. So I'm just going to go in and put 90. And you can see what's happened is it's moved around. I mean, it looks flat. You really can't see it because it has no dimension except for 1. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and move the Z rotation. And once again, it doesn't matter if it's minus 90 or plus 90. Okay, so now that's in position. So now I'm going to change the position. So I can either press P for position and move down the Y coordinate, or I can just hit the down arrow to move the position. So what I'm going to do is, this is, like I said before, a very inexact science. So I'm just going to keep on clicking until I start to see the little grungy black corners of these two walls. And sure enough, it's starting to come into focus. So that looks pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do is duplicate this, the gray floor. Press P. I'm going to duplicate this. And now, instead of gray floor, this is going to become gray ceiling. So I'm going to make that last, just so I don't get confused. And this time, I just have to move the position up. So it will give me a roof. And once again, I'm sort of eyeballing it, but I am looking out for the edges of these top edges of the two walls. So now I have what appears to be a bit of a tunnel. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So naturally, I'm going to save this, and we're going to move on to the next thing, which is we're going to add a camera. The camera will allow us to start at the beginning of the tunnel and go to the end of the tunnel. So a camera, if you remember, just like anything else, is a layer. So I go into Layer, New Camera. In this particular case, I'm going to choose 35mm because it's a slightly wide angle, one node camera. You can play around with the f-stop if you want. If you want to get a more shallow depth of field, you can do that by making the aperture, the f-stop, a little bit smaller. So I'm going to press OK, and now we have our camera. In the camera, we're just going to be changing the position. So if I go to change the position now, which of course is going to be the Z coordinate, you'll kind of see we can go back and forth. However, I want to position the camera exactly at the beginning of the tunnel. I can't really see it from this view. So what I'm going to do is select two views. And in the right view is going to be my active camera, so I can kind of see where I'm going. I'm going to get rid of the controls again. Okay, oops. I'm going to get rid of the title safe margins. That's what I meant. Okay, so in the left side, I can view this from many different angles. My objective is I want to be able to see the camera so I can move it. You'll notice that in the active view, the active camera view, I can't really see the camera. I can only see it if I'm in one of the other views. So this is more like an entire set or a stage where now you can see the lights in the camera so you can manipulate them. So what I want to do is pull this camera all the way back in the Z space, and you'll see that as I drag it in the top view, I can see the camera moving in the bottom view. I'm on sort of a small computer, so a laptop, so I really can't see it very well. Now, when you get toward the end, you'll notice how imperfect this. I guess this isn't too bad. Sometimes you can see how things are slightly off. So what we want to do is we want to stop right around the point where it's the beginning of the tunnel. So now we've got the beginning of the tunnel. And let me just move this over a little bit. Okay, and we're going to have move the camera's position. So my playhead is at 0 frames. Oh, by the way, not that it matters because I've made this for you, but this is a 10 seconds of a on the timeline. So I'm going to activate the position on 0 frame, and I'm going to go up a little bit less than 10 seconds, and I'm going to move the camera. So you can either add a keyframe on the left side of the timeline, although that might appear in a different spot depending upon how your timeline is configured. Or I can just move, I can just move this. See if I can come back a little bit further. Oh. Okay, I can just continue to move this. So it's on, the last keyframe is on 9 seconds and 21 frames. So I'm going to move it in the timeline. I'm just going to go through, and you'll notice that this is actually going off the screen. And I want to stop almost when I get to the end. I can always go back and change that. So let's see what it looks like here. I'm going to go back to one view. Now, I'm not skipping any frames on this. If you're having a problem with playback, what you want to do is in the preview window, which I guess I don't have up here, in the preview window, just in case you forgot how to do this, you can skip 1 or 2 frames, and that will kind of speed up the preview for you a little bit. So now if I play it back, it's going to go a little bit quicker. But it, excuse me, but it is 9 seconds, so it does take a while. Okay, so now to add a little drama to it. Well, I think before we add the drama, I think what I'm going to do is add the Route 66 sign. Okay, and if you are in, if I have done this in a class before, you know what's going to happen. So I'm going to bring in the Route 66 sign. Doesn't matter where I put it. But what does matter is I have to turn on 3D. As soon as I turn on 3D, you can see it in all its glory, this Route 66 sign. So there it is. I just went in and I turned on layer controls. This way I can see what I'm doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is scale it down lots. And of course, I put it in 3D space. I'm going to go way down. And now, in order to place this where I want it, I'm going to select 2 views now. And this time, well, I guess this is okay if I do it this way. Well, actually, I think this time what I'll do is I'll view my sign from the left. So you can see that my 3D sign, so what I want to happen is I want it to pop up during this trip that it's going to take. Let's see, let me just zoom this down a little bit. So maybe what I'll do, so I'm going to, if this is, let's see if I can identify my camera. So my camera is here. So what I want is, I think I want my Route 66 sign to move up a little bit. The other thing I want to make sure is that the sign is touching the bottom. This is the floor. And a matter of fact, just so I don't accidentally move these, notice what I'm doing. I'm locking the four walls and the ceiling and the floor because they can move really easily, especially if the Route 66 sign is underneath those particular layers. So what I want to do is make sure that this Route 66 sign, this is my floor, so I want it to touch down here. Now, one other thing that I forgot to do, which was really stupid, is I forgot to change the anchor point on this. So I'm going to temporarily turn off the 3D on this and go up, whoops, into my pan behind, or my angle tool, or you can just press Y on the keyboard, and I'm going to put the anchor point on the bottom center this way. If I rotate it, it's going to rotate from the bottom center. So I'm going to move it over here, and I think I'm going to make it even a little bit smaller too, because it still looks kind of big to me. So I'm going to move it over. I could move it forward if I wanted to. This is all a very inexact science. Okay, so let's say, oh yeah, I have to turn on the 3D again. So that way it's going to move with everything. So what I'm going to do is about at 1 second, I'm going to activate the rotation. I'm going to press R, and I'm going to rotate the R rotation. I'm going to press create two keyframes that are I don't know, about a half a second apart. And on the first one, I'm going to make the X rotation minus 90. Okay, so you'll see that it's actually laying flat on this floor. So what happens is, as I move through it, it comes up. Okay, you can also do that with, well, I left the other things, you know, here's the gravestone. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some light. Or maybe before you, sorry, I keep on changing my mind. I think I'll put the mime in as long as we're here. So the mime is this creepy looking character that seems perfect for this dark and creepy tunnel. So I'm going to turn on the 3D, and I'm going to bring her way to the back. So let me press in the position. And once again, I'm going to make use of the side, or you can also do the top. That makes it easy too. The top or the left. Then you can figure out where she is and where she has to go. So the mime is here. And I believe if I move backwards, we want to get her in back of the end of the tunnel. And you can see how far back this goes. So we want her way, way back. So I'm using my anchor point tool. So I could also move her like this. So now I might even bring her back a little bit farther. And notice what I'm doing is I'm trying to find the Z position, or I could also do this. So see how far back? She's quite far back. I'm going to move her down a little bit. Okay. So she's, like I said, she's pretty far back. And also, well, we're going to see what's going to happen once we add a light, which is the next thing we're going to do. So let's see where the camera is. The camera's way back here. Always remember to keep saving your work too. Now what I'm going to do is add a new light. So it's layer new light. And the first light I'm going to add is a spotlight. You can pick a color if you want. If you want to go with something that's a little yellowish or white or whatever. I'm going to bring the intensity way up. Maybe like, just maybe like almost 400. I have, let's see, cone feather. We might change that. Shadow darkness. I don't think we're going to cast shadows on anything. So we'll worry about that some other time. And then shadow diffusion, which is the area around the shadow, if there were shadows. I don't think there really are going to be shadows on this. So let's press on OK. And you'll notice now that this light is way too bright. The other thing is I want the light to be closer to the actual camera. And in my left view, I can see that the camera is way back here, and my light is way over here. So what I want to do is I want to bring back the Z coordinate so it's closer, and maybe also down a little bit. Okay, and you'll notice as you manipulate it this way, it can kind of change. I might even want to bring it right back behind the light. So you can kind of play around with this. The other thing I think I want to do is go back to the camera layer, and I want to bring the camera down a little bit. So let me bring the coordinates down a little bit. It looks like we're going to have to play with the light too, but we'll see what happens, because as you can see, we're currently not seeing one of the sides of this. Maybe I'll move it up just a little bit. All right. If I look at this instead of from the left and look at it from the top, I can also see, I can orient myself to where this light is. And it looks like maybe it has to, the light might have to move a little bit over here. You can see what's going on. Okay, so now we can kind of start seeing everything again. The third thing that's wrong with this light is that the intensity is way too high. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit. All right, still doesn't look too great. So what I'm going to do is, there's too much black and white. So what I'm going to do is add yet another another layer, but this time I'm going to add an ambient light. An ambient light, which I'm going to put way down here, will kind of brighten it up a little bit. Now notice if I go back and I want to edit this, I just have to double click on the ambient light layer, and then I can bring it down a little bit and I can see it change in real time. And I could also change the color here. Let's see, I want it to be a little bit more orangey. If you want to go for a warm look, you can do that. Okay, now there's still a problem with the light shining on this mime. It's way too bright. So we'll fix that in a little while. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the spotlight. I'm going to lock the ambient light too. And in order for it to move with the camera, I'm going to make it the child of the camera. So the camera will become the parent of the spotlight. So I can either use the pick whip and drag and drop it onto the camera. And you can see once I do that, the light is moving with the camera. The other thing I could have done was just select camera in the drop down underneath parent and link. So now as I move along, you'll notice that, go back to the beginning. Okay. And you'll also see that the light on the creepy mime, when we get to, sorry, I'm choking here. When we get to the last keyframe, we can see that she's up way too high, for one thing. So we have to bring her down. And not only that, but she's lit up too much. So that's a problem. So I would think that in order to fix that, we would have to go in and play around with the ambient light and the spotlight again. Probably move the intensity of the spotlight down a little bit. We can do that. And the other thing we can do is move the position of the spotlight. Once again, if we look at it from the left view, we can sort of get an idea of where this light is in relation to the camera. So we might want to, let's see, where's the spotlight? Is there. We might want to sort of move it back a little bit. We can also point it at a different spot and move it down. Let's see what happens when we do this. Okay. Now, if we don't like what we just did, we can go back and press Command-C a couple of times and change it around a little bit. So I think that if you moved the light in a different position, it would probably take care of the problem here. Because now, of course, it's a little too dark. So let me turn up the spotlight again. And the ambient light also. I'll bring that up a little bit so you can see this a little better. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do, the other thing I could do is with the mime, if I can find the layer, I can also bring down the opacity a little bit too. That would probably help. Okay,